Okay, let's get our fabrics ready for the Schoolhouse block. I'm going to go through in order from the top of our cutting list. So this is my fabric 4. That's going to be like the sky. And then I've got fabric number 29, which is going to be for the roof of the schoolhouse. It's like the window part. And this fabric 11 comes up a few times, and it's the roof and the walls of the schoolhouse. Then we've got number 34, which is the door of the top part. Then we have number 6, which is the surrounds of the top part of the schoolhouse. So that's E for E and F. And for G, we've got the grey again. And for H and K, which is in the bottom part, I've got the blue version of this, which is fabric number 1. And then for the door at the bottom, there's this pink. And then the other one that we need is for I, which is fabric number 35, and that's the black. So now we can start cutting these pieces out. Most of the pieces are very straightforward to cut. But what I'm going to do now is explain to you how I did the roof, and we're going to do that using a stitch and flip method. If you've ever done paper piecing, it's basically very, very simple paper piecing. So we're going to start this block by making the roof section. So for fabric A is this greeny yellow. Fabric B is this one. And fabric C is our grey. So we'll start with a square of A and a square of B, which we're going to slice on the diagonal, and a rectangle of C, which is going to go in between. Now I've given you these templates. Do check your measurements before you use them. Normally, if I'm doing foundation paper piecing where I've got fine points and things to make, I like to use a lighter weight paper than this, but because we've just got 2 simple seams, this paper is going to work fine. So with this fabric here, this is going to be for piece A, and it's the first time we've used it, so we're going from the opposite end to the label, and we're going to need 2 squares that are 4 inches by 4 inches. So I'm just going to fold my fabric over, so I've got about 4 inches there. And you don't have to cut it exactly accurately because we're going to be trimming it later. So long as you don't go under, you're going to be fine. So about 4 inches square. And this way I'm going to cut 2 at once. So up and across like that, turn it around, and put my 4 inches on, and I'll be a little bit generous. And that's my fold cut off. So now I've got 2 squares, and I'm going to cut them on the diagonal. So I've got 4 triangles. So this is squares again, and these are going to be cut 3 inches. And I need 2 squares again. So again, roughly, doesn't have to be perfect. So there's a 3 inch roughly, and another one. I'll just give those a press. Cut them on the diagonal. So again, I've got 4 triangles. And then my grey fabric, I'm going to cut rectangles 6 inches by 2 inches. So there's one of my rectangles. So the first thing I'm going to do with the template is to cut it outside this dashed final cutting line. So here's my template cut out roughly. Now I'm going to get a piece of card or something quite thin firm that I'm going to use to fold it on the lines. So my quilting rulers are a bit too thick to do that. So anything you've got, like a piece of card that's reasonably stiff, you can use. So I'm putting it along the line, and then I'm going to fold the paper and run my finger along like that. And then I'm going to put it on the other line between C and B, fold it like that. Okay. Now the first thing we're going to do is join our triangle A and our rectangle C. We want them right sides together like this. Okay. Now if I fold on this big fold across, right across the middle of my square, and then put it like this with the rectangle on top, and take my paper and put it roughly 1/4 inch down from the edge of my fabric. Now I want a couple of pins. So I'm going to open my paper out and pin one there and one here. Now what I want to do is to make sure that I have enough of this green fabric sticking out to the corners. So it has to get at least as far as the dashed line here, and that's looking really good. It's perfect. If you're having problems lining that up, you could just fold your fabric and find the centre and then line the centres of the fabric and the paper up. But I think you're going to have enough so that you won't have a problem. And then once we've done that, we're going to the sewing machine and we're going to sew all the way from here where these two lines meet, all the way through up to here where these two lines meet. Now I've got my machine set up with a very small stitch. Mine's 1.8, and that will make taking the paper out easier when I've finished. So if you can get that low, or 2 will be fine. And my needle is in the centre position, and I've got a nice open-toed foot. So just your ordinary straight stitching foot or an open-toe foot, not a 1/4 inch foot. And we're going to be sewing actually on the lines. So I'm going to just turn my wheel to make sure my needle's about in the right place. Got my ordinary thread for piecing in here. And we don't need to fasten or anything, we're just stitching right through and keeping my eye on that line so that my needle's staying on the line as I go. Okay, so I've gone right past the places where I said, so just making sure that it's sewn all the way through means that you've sewn through the seam allowances for the final piece. And then we're going to turn it over. And we'll press this when we get to the end as well. So just be careful when you press not to get a pleat in the seam. And then turn my paper back over again and fold on this line between B and C. At this point, if you have done foundation paper piecing before and you have an add a quarter ruler, you can use that ruler, but I'm just going to use my ordinary one. I'm putting my 1/4 inch line on this fold of the paper and then cut. Open this back up again and turn it over. Now I'm going to get a B triangle and I'm going to put that right sides together like that. You want it to be placed in the middle so that this point, because this point is going to fold up to there, So just make sure you've got about the same amount on either side here. I've been quite generous with the allowances though. So now we're going to turn this over, holding this in place, turn it over and pop a pin in there and another pin in here. Okay, just double check that's there, double check you've got your seam allowance, and then we're going to sew from up here all the way through down to there. I've gone past my dashed line. So now I've sewn from here through to here. If I turn over and press this back, like that, you can see what's going to happen. So the last step is to turn this over and get my ruler, place the ruler on this outside final cutting line, cut the paper and the fabric at the same time. Now here we should be making a 3.5 inch square, so you can actually use your ruler to make sure that that's what you're doing. So I've cut my first line, so if I put my 3.5 on that line that I cut and the 3.5 on the dashed line at the bottom, okay, and I can see that that corner is coming through where my stitching is. So I'm going to cut up here and across there and then make my final cut 3.5 inches from my first cut. There. So that's my unit made, and all I need to do now is to remove the paper. So you should just be able to tear it off like that. Nice and easy. And there we go. And you're going to make 4 of these. I printed them out in both directions just so it was clear to you what you were doing, but they're actually identical. But if you have some directional fabric, that might be something that you want to pay attention to. All the other pieces are straightforward squares and rectangles. So once I've got those cut out, we'll come back and assemble our block.